All right, my friend, welcome back to episode number 4. I am so excited that you're here and I can't wait to start this new episode. And I wanted to go back to the basics. So I have been talking about, diet and detoxes. And so I want to go back to the basics to get you started, right? But first of all, I want to share my happiness about being able to do a podcast. Excuse me. At first, I was so nervous. I'm still nervous, but I have been delaying doing a podcast because of imposter syndrome and these other, fears and uncertainties. But now that I started, right, sometimes that's what happens when you do the first step and you're like, oh, nothing bad happened to me, right? I didn't die. I'm actually really enjoying it. I look forward to Mondays because that's usually when I record my next episode. And so, as I'm going, over the topics that I want to talk about or what I want to talk about, I get really excited, right? And Monday mornings, I prepare myself mentally and I just get so excited. So hopefully you are as excited as I am. But the reason why I'm sharing you know, um, why I was fearing starting a podcast and all these emotions that I get, because a lot of my patients, when they come to me and they want to change their nutrition or they want to change the way that they are eating, they have the same fears, right? Or similar fears of starting something new and asking themselves a lot of the times, is this going to work for me? Because they try so many things, right? And oftentimes, unfortunately, I am the last resort. And that's okay, right? Because I'm the expert and so I'm able to help them. But usually we try these other things, right? That we hear that they're working, or my friend is doing that and that's working for her, or my mom did that and that's working for her. But oftentimes that doesn't is not the case, right? And so sometimes just stepping away from that fear and just saying, okay, I am going to do these, and I know that I'm going to do my best and see what happens, right? And so, anyway, going back to the reason why we are here today, right? And that is to go back to the basics. And this is nutrition basics, right? So, why, right? Because once you understand the basics and once you understand how balance meals and how to make your meals balance, it's going to be a lot easier for you to make nutrition changes. So let's start with macronutrients, right? What does that mean? A macronutrient is basically a big molecule. Macro, right? That's what it means. And so, in terms of nutrition, macronutrients is just your main nutrients that a food is composed of. And that is protein, carbohydrates, and fats, right? Everything that we eat, obviously, with the exception of water, but everything that we eat in essence is broken down in our bodies into those simple macronutrients and then into very small molecules. So, for example, proteins are broken down into amino acids, right, which are the building blocks of our bodies. Carbohydrates are broken down into sugar, right, or glucose molecules, which are the fuel or the energy source of our bodies. And then fat are broken down into fatty acids, right, that helps us insulate our bodies and helps our brains, and it helps it with hormones and these other factors that functions that happen in our bodies. But that's how food is broken down. And then we also have our micronutrients, right? Smaller molecules like are your vitamins and your minerals and your trace minerals, which we're not going to talk about that today. But that's how our food is broken down into, right? And so let's start with the macronutrients, right? So protein, as I said, it's composed of amino acids, which are the building blocks of our bodies. And every single part of your body has an amino acid. Has a protein molecule. And so some protein sources, we have animal and plant-based. Your animal protein sources are going to include your chicken, your fish, your beef, your turkey, your eggs, your Greek yogurt, in all your animal sources, and then you also have supplements like a protein powder or a protein bar. And then you have your plant sources, which are your beans, your legumes, your tofu, your edamame, your tempeh, um, nuts and seeds will give you some protein as well. And so when keep that in mind, right, as we move on to the next macronutrients, and how we are going to create a balanced meal with them. And the next one, right? Well, let me give you a little bit more on protein, right? So 1 gram of protein is going to give you 4 calories, 4 calories per 1 gram of protein. Now, let's talk about carbohydrates, right? It's a bigger group, right? You have, even though beans and legumes also give you protein, they also give you some carbohydrates. So they are included in the carbohydrates too. Your fruits are part of your carbohydrates. Your starchy vegetables as well, like potatoes, peas, corn, winter squashes, like pumpkin and um, butternut squash and acorn squash. And then you have your grains, right? Your pastas, your rice, your tortillas, your bread, your cereals. They are all part of your carbohydrates. And what the same thing as protein, right? 1 gram of carbohydrate is equal to 4 calories. You don't have to get so overwhelmed with that information. It's just to give you that piece of information as because it is part of basic nutrition. um, and then again, remember, carbohydrates are digested into smaller molecules, which are your sugar or your glucose molecules, and that's how your body uses that as fuel, right, to give you energy. The next macronutrient is fat, right, or fatty acids, and you find them in fatty fish like salmon or sardines. You also find it in your nuts and your seeds, and avocados, olives, and all your other oils. You also find it in fatty meats. What else? I said no, nuts, oils, peanut butter, right? And fats are converted into fatty acids, which also give you energy, but they are more energy dense. So 1 gram of fat is equivalent to 9 calories, right? 9 calories per 1 gram of fat. So it is over twice as much of what protein and carbohydrates are going to give you. So essentially, we need a little bit less versus the carbohydrates and the fats, but we still need them, right? They are carbohydrates. Just as carbohydrates, they are also part of our foods, and we cannot eliminate them. There is such a thing as a fatty acid deficiency. And so we need them as well, right? Um, so then there's that. There are your macronutrients, right? Proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. Protein and carbohydrates will give you 4 calories per 1 gram, and then fats will give you 9 calories per 1 gram. So how can we use this information to create balanced meals, right? And this is a concept that I use with every single patient that comes to see me. And that is, I call it, which is registered, the 3-2-1 method, right? I'm trying to make it as simple as I can make it so that way we can use it every single time. And so the 3-2-1 method is you want to aim for at least 3 ounces of protein, whatever it is, the protein that you want to eat, right? 3 ounces of protein. And you want 2 servings of vegetables, about 2 cups. 1 cup of cooked vegetables is equivalent to 2 cups of raw vegetables. And then you want 1 serving of carbohydrates, right? That could be 3/4 to a cup of rice or pastas or noodles, 2 tortillas, 2 slices of bread, any carbohydrate that you want to add, a sweet potato, another starchy vegetable. And then those are the 3 components that you want to add with every single one of your meals. And you might ask the question, but why? Because when you have that combination, it's going to help you to feel satiated, right? Satisfied and satiated for a longer period of time. And that's going to help you to maintain your blood sugar levels more stable versus oh, let me just eat, you know, a bagel, right, with some cream cheese. You get bagels are really dense, right? So depending on how big it is, if it's just your regular sized bagel that you buy at a bagel shop, that is going to be about 4 servings of carbohydrates. And then you add, some cream cheese, which is mostly, fat, and you feel satiated, right? You feel at that moment because it's a dense carbohydrate. But so you're gonna have a sugar spike just naturally, and your body's gonna take care of it because if you don't have diabetes or any other sugar issues or insulin issues, our bodies love that, right? We're gonna try to use it as energy, but then the sustainability of that energy is what starts to drop. And then you start to get hungry or you start to have cravings because we forgot another main component, right? Which is your protein. So think of your protein as keeping your hunger more stable, keeping those blood sugars more stable because you're digesting it not as fast, right, as a carbohydrate. And so you want to have that. You want to try to have at least those three, groups combined with every single one of your meals. Before I go on, and I've talked about these in my previous episodes too, but because we are in the sense of talking about basic nutrition, I want to go back a little bit, right? Because I'm talking about food groups. And so we have 5 food groups, right? If you can remember, this is a long time ago, we used to have the my pyramid, right? The USDA created that, United States of Agricultural Department, I think that's what it is, USDA. And so it wasn't very user friendly, but the information was there, but it wasn't very user friendly. So then they created a My Plate using the 5 food groups because then you can visualize how your plate looks like and what components that you can add. But for the purpose of today, we we want to learn about the 5 food groups, right? And this is something that I teach that I share with my clients as well. So we have protein, grains, fruits, vegetables, and dairy or high calcium, high vitamin D foods like your plant sources of like milk, right, or yogurt. And so with that in mind, right, and with the 3-2-1 method in mind, you want to have at least 3 of those food groups. Always a protein, always a vegetable, and then you can decide with the third group if you want to do a healthy fat, if you want to do a fruit, if you want to do a grain, whatever is the case may be, or whatever you feel like having at that time. But again, that combination of the protein, the combination of the fiber from the fruits or the vegetables or the whole grains, and then your starches or your carbohydrates, whatever you want to choose, or a healthy fat, is what keeps you satiated and those energy levels and those sugar levels sustained for a longer period of time. But also, you're not going to be having these roller coaster in your sugar levels, right? And that's what you want. Now, here is the thing that, and this happens probably 80% of the time with patients that come in to see me, is that they tell me I don't eat breakfast. And we get used to, our bodies get used to it. The amazing thing is that our bodies are able to adapt and adjust. And so if we get used to, eating breakfast, then, your body adapts. The problem is when you don't have breakfast and then your next meal, you skip it, right, for whatever reason, and now you are at dinner time. But on the meantime, as it's coming to dinner time, you're getting all these cravings, you're getting this anxiety or the sense of feeling of wanting to eat everything that is around you. And that's because your brain is like, hey, you haven't fed me for a long time. And my energy levels or my fuel is running out, right? Or I'm using a lot of fuel. And so now we're having these behaviors of eating everything that's around us. Or if you're the one that's cooking at home, right, you're eating chips or pretzels or whatever that is around you while you're cooking. And that's one of the reasons why, right? Because we're not fueling our bodies with these balanced meals throughout the day. So when we do have the time to eat, right, we tend to eat a lot. bigger portions or really fast. And all those things, right? All of those factors contribute to how we feel and how our bodies digest food and the cravings and those energy levels. And so I want you to, it's fine if you don't want to have breakfast, right? That's your choice. But I want you to make your next meal a balanced meal. And I want you to use that 3-2-1 method, right? At least 3 ounces of protein, which is equivalent to about, depending on what kind of protein you use, 21 to 25 grams of protein. So you want to have that, at least. And then you want to choose, your 2 servings of vegetables. You can also add, 1 serving of vegetable, 1 serving of fruit, a medium-sized fruit. And then you can choose if you want to do a carb or a starch or a grain or a healthy fat. But that's how I want you to have your first meal or your next meal if you're not having breakfast. And then that's how I want you to have your next meal, to the point where every time we sit down to eat, you look at your plate and you say, okay, do I have the 3-2-1 method, right? Do I have that balanced meal? My protein, my vegetables, my grain. Once you start doing that, you are going to see a huge change. Number one, on your energy levels, right? Because again, you're adding these nutrients that are supporting your energy. You're not going to feel as tired. Obviously, you're not going to see it in one day, right? Because these habits that you've been doing, you're not started them in one day. But if you stay consistent, right, your body's getting these nutrients, your body's getting this fuel that it can use for other things other than just surviving, right? So that's what you want to do with your meals. If you say, okay, I want to start eating breakfast because I wasn't eating breakfast because I don't have time, or because I was fasting, or whatever the case may be, the same concept applies, right? You want to make sure that you have at least 25 grams of protein with that meal. And then you can choose your fruit or vegetable, your grain, or your healthy fat. So for one example, you can use, right, half a cup to one whole cup of egg whites, right? You can scramble them, add some veggies, mushrooms, spinach, tomatoes, bell peppers, whatever you want to do. And then a slice of bread, right? That's a balanced breakfast. And you're starting your day with a high protein breakfast. And what that does is that, your body's going to have that sustainable energy that when it comes lunchtime, right, you're not hungry, or you don't know what to eat, or your brain can function because you haven't filled up your brain. Here's a fact about the brain. It uses 20% of your energy, right? And so if you're not eating enough, right, or if you're not making balanced meals or having balanced meals, your brain is only using, what's available. And so then a lot of the times, this is another thing that I hear a lot from my clients is I feel foggy, I can't seem to think, I get frustrated, my mood changes. And that is not by coincidence, right? That is how we are feeling our bodies. And so, especially if you have a job that requires a lot of mental power, your brain is using so much of that energy, right? And if you're not fueling yourself correctly, how do you expect your brain to function? Think of it as an athlete too, right? If you're not fueling properly, or anybody that is now exercising, how do you expect your body to function if you're not fueling yourself properly, right? It can only do whatever is available, right? But it needs to recover, it needs to repair. And the way that it does that is by making sure that you fuel yourself properly. And that is one of the ways, right? And probably is like the number one way that you should be doing when it comes to nutrition. So to recap on that, I want you to start your meal. I want you to have your first meal, whatever that meal is, right? Ideally, hopefully, is not that you're not skipping meals all day. But I want you to have that first meal with that concept in mind, the 3-2-1 method, right? at least 3 ounces of protein, your 2 cups of vegetables, so you can do 1 cup of vegetables and 1 serving of fruit. And then the third one, the one serving of carbohydrates, right? Of starches or grains, or 1 serving of healthy fats, avocados, nuts, or seeds. Get into that habit, right? And start changing your meals like that. My next episode is going to be on tips on meal planning and meal prepping and how to help you tackle that goal, right? Because that's the next thing. Like, okay, now I have this knowledge, I have this information, but how do I put it into practice, right? And that's one of the things that I want you to also take into account, right? Having the knowledge but not putting it into practice is just not going to help you, right? You're gonna forget it, and it's not going to work. So practice is knowledge, even if it's not perfect, right? Even if you're like, okay, she said to have at least protein. If the only thing that you can think about or that you can remember from this episode is protein, prioritize that, right? Make sure that you have your protein. And then you can work on to the next components. And that is it, my friend. Nutrition doesn't have to be difficult. You don't have to have like these complicated plans that or diets that are not giving you what your body needs, right? It's very simple. Have your protein, have your fruits and vegetables, have another type of carbohydrate or healthy fat. And that's how you get a pretty well balanced meal. And that's how you get the fuel that your body needs and the energy. And that is it, right? Then we can focus on adding a variety of foods, or even adding a variety of vegetables and fruits and grains. But start with the basics, right? Start with those basic things, that basic method that I'm giving you, and work on that, right? And that is it. I am in the notes, in the show notes, you can find a resource there that you can use as a guide that has what pretty much we talked about today, right? The macronutrients, um, the 5 food groups, and examples of what one serving is, and so that way that can help you, right, to get you started. You are an individual, you're a unique person, and so this is just a starting point. This is just a guide, a general guide, right? If you're needing more individualized guidance or a plan, send me an email, reach out to me, and then we can work on that. That reminds me, I am actually doing a free 3-day nutrition class, and the information is going to be in the show notes too. That is going to be next week, as a matter of fact, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, 12 p.m. Pacific time. It's completely free. And that's what I'm going to be talking about, similar to what I talked about today. Um, basic nutrition, tips on how to meal plan, things that you can do to get you started if you're wanting to change your nutrition or your healthy habits. Again, it is completely free. You don't have to pay anything. So take advantage of that. If you know anybody that needs this class, share the link, share the information. Again, it is next week on February 12th, 13th, and 14th at 12 p.m. Pacific time. It's going to be live, and so come and join me. Let's share let's share the afternoon. You can come and have your lunch as well, since it is lunchtime. But it will be available too um, as a recorded episode if you're not able to make it. And I think that is it, my friend. So again, stay with the basics, right? Start with the basics. You don't need another diet. You don't need another complicated plan. We need to come back to the basics, right? Making sure that you have those 3 groups, right? Following the 3-2-1 method. It works, my friend. I use this with every single patient that comes to see me, and we see results. And then we change things as we go along. But that's the main thing. Check out the show notes for the resource that I provided or that I mentioned to help you get started. And then also check out the information on my free 3-day nutrition class next week. Share with a friend. And that is it for today. Thank you so much for joining me. Remember to stay strong and stay healthy. And I will see you next time. See you next week. Thank you so much, and bye bye for now.